The moment Barron Trump stepped into the grand lobby of the Hudson Royale, he could feel the eyes on him. The five-star hotel, famous for catering to Hollywood elites and progressive politicians, reeked of exclusivity, not because of its price, but because of its values. Marble floors gleamed under the dim chandeliers, designer-clad guests sipped overpriced cocktails at the bar, and a jazz pianist played softly in the background. It was the kind of place where people spoke of diversity, but only tolerated one kind of belief. Barron walked toward the front desk, where a thin, well-dressed man in his 40s stood behind the counter. His name tag read Elliot Green, and from the way he pursed his lips the moment he saw Barron, it was clear he knew exactly who he was dealing with. "Welcome to the Hudson Royale," Elliot said smoothly, though his smile didn't reach his eyes. "I have a reservation," Barron said calmly, placing his card on the counter. Elliot didn't even look at the screen. Instead, he tilted his head slightly and gave a rehearsed, almost gleeful smirk. "I'm afraid there's been a change of plans, Mr. Trump," he said. "We won't be able to accommodate you tonight." Barron raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" Elliot sighed, as if this were an unfortunate inconvenience, not a deliberate move. "You see, the Hudson Royale has a strict policy on who we allow to stay here," he continued. "We strive to create an inclusive and welcoming environment, and, well, I'm sure you understand." From the corner of his eye, Barron noticed something. A group of guests at the bar had turned their attention toward him. Some whispered, some chuckled. One even lifted his phone, discreetly recording. He looked back at Elliot. "So let me get this straight," he said, his voice steady. "You claim to be inclusive, yet you're excluding me because of my last name?" Elliot's smirk widened slightly. "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone who doesn't align with our values." Someone behind Barron let out a mocking laugh. "Serves him right," a man in a tailored suit muttered to his date. "Trump's kid has no business here." Then, a familiar voice rang out across the lobby. "Finally, a hotel with standards." Barron turned his head. Standing by the bar, drink in hand, was none other than Michael Reynolds, a famous liberal talk show host known for his aggressive attacks on conservatives. His smug grin stretched across his face as he raised his glass. "I was wondering when places like this would stop letting these people in," Reynolds said, loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. The guests laughed, some even clapped. They were celebrating his humiliation. The applause in the lobby echoed like a slap in the face. People were actually celebrating his rejection. Barron's fingers curled slightly, but his expression remained unreadable. He had dealt with this kind of treatment before: whispers, stares, people expecting him to react. But this was different. Michael Reynolds, the liberal talk show host, smirked and took a slow sip of his drink. His eyes locked onto Barron like a predator watching its prey. "Maybe try the motel down the street," Reynolds said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I hear they take anyone." Laughter, more applause. The rich elites in the lobby acted as if this was entertainment, as if they had just witnessed a great victory. Elliot, the hotel manager, remained behind the desk, his smirk growing wider. He enjoyed this. But Barron? He didn't flinch. Instead, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and calmly opened the voice recording app. "So just to clarify," Barron said, his voice loud and clear enough for the entire lobby to hear, "the Hudson Royale, a hotel that claims to be inclusive, is denying me service because of my last name." Elliot's smirk faltered slightly. "Sir, I already explained." No, Barron interrupted, his tone steady. "I want to make sure I got this right. You're refusing me service because I'm a Trump?" A tense silence fell over the room. People were watching. Phones were recording. Reynolds let out an exaggerated sigh. "Oh, come on, kid. No one here wants you. Just leave like a good little..." "Like a good little what?" Barron cut in sharply, his gaze locking onto Reynolds like a blade. Reynolds hesitated. He hadn't expected pushback. Barron turned back to Elliot. "So here's what's going to happen," he said. slipping his phone back into his pocket. "I leave, but by tomorrow morning, the entire world is going to know exactly what kind of place this is." Elliot's jaw tightened. "Are you threatening us?" he asked, his voice not as confident as before. Barron smirked. "No, I'm giving you a gift, the chance to be famous. Congratulations." And with that, he turned and walked toward the exit. A few guests laughed. Others whispered. But Barron? He didn't give them the satisfaction of looking back. Barron sat in the back of his car, staring at the blur of city lights outside the window while his phone buzzed relentlessly. He knew the video would get attention, but this fast? Even he hadn't expected that. Unlocking his screen, he was met with an explosion of notifications. Clips of his exchange with the hotel manager were spreading like wildfire. His calm yet pointed questioning, the smug arrogance of the staff, the undeniable hypocrisy, it was all there, perfectly captured. Within minutes, the internet had erupted. First in the comments, then in Twitter threads, then in YouTube live streams. If this had happened to anyone else, it would be a national scandal. So much for the tolerant left. Apparently tolerance only applies to the right kind of people. This is outright discrimination. They're trying to silence us. Then, the big voices got involved. A well-known conservative podcaster posted the clip with the caption, "If Barron were black or transgender, CNN and MSNBC would be holding special reports on discrimination. But because he's a Trump, silence." The post went instantly viral. Hashtag boycott Hudson Royal began trending. Then hashtag woke hotel exposed. He had expected left-wing media to defend the hotel, to justify their actions, to argue that he somehow had it coming. But then he saw tweets that told a different story. "I hate the Trumps, but are we really banning people from hotels because of their last name now? We can't pretend this is okay. This is literally discrimination." I'm no fan of Barron, but the hotel just made a huge mistake. The narrative was shifting. He scrolled further and saw a new statement from the Hudson Royale. "We believe in inclusivity and diversity. The situation with Mr. Trump was misunderstood, and we are working to address the matter internally." Internally? That wasn't a denial. That was panic. Barron leaned back, shaking his head, phone resting in his palm. They had thrown him out to make a statement, but now they were the ones being hunted. Barron scrolled through his feed, watching the chaos unfold in real time. News outlets were already running segments on the controversy, with split-screen debates about whether the hotel had gone too far. Conservative hosts were furious, calling it a clear case of political discrimination. But what really interested Barron was the hesitation from liberal media. Some tried to downplay the situation, but the usual confidence in their arguments was missing. The hotel has a right to refuse service, but this does feel excessive. If we're talking about inclusivity, should it not apply to everyone? Would we be okay if a liberal figure were kicked out of a conservative-owned business? Barron smirked. That was the real question, wasn't it? Then something else caught his attention. A leaked email. Screenshots began surfacing from inside the hotel's staff chat. A whistleblower, likely an employee who disagreed with what had happened, had exposed the entire setup. One message stood out. "The higher-ups don't want Trump's kid here. If he shows up, make it as difficult as possible. We don't need that kind of attention." Barron's eyebrows lifted. Well. Within minutes, every major outlet was covering it. New, leaked emails show Hudson Royale's targeted ban on Barron Trump. The hotel lied. Internal messages reveal planned exclusion. Even some left-wing journalists were shocked. A well-known liberal columnist tweeted, "If this is true, Hudson Royale just handed conservatives the biggest win of the year. This isn't just bad optics, it's blatant hypocrisy." Barron knew exactly what was coming next. The hotel had thought they were untouchable, but now they had one way out, a public apology. And the question was, would Barron accept it? The pressure on the Hudson Royale had reached a boiling point. The leaked emails had been the final straw. Now, even their most loyal clientele were distancing themselves. Some celebrities who had been frequent guests suddenly found themselves in an awkward position. Would they continue to support a business that had been caught discriminating against someone purely because of his last name? For the hotel, the PR nightmare was spiraling out of control. Barron sat in his penthouse, watching news anchors tear into the hotel's weak excuses. The leaked messages had completely destroyed their defense. Even the most die-hard liberal pundits had been forced to admit that what had happened wasn't justifiable. The Hudson Royale had thought they were sending a message when they humiliated him. But now, they were the ones being judged. The notification on his phone was almost predictable. An official statement from the Hudson Royale had just been released. At the Hudson Royale, we value inclusivity, diversity, and creating a welcoming environment for all our guests. We deeply regret any misunderstandings that may have occurred, and will be reviewing our policies to ensure that all individuals are treated fairly in the future. Barron exhaled sharply, shaking his head. We deeply regret any misunderstandings. They still weren't admitting what they did. They weren't apologizing. They were damage controlling. He refreshed Twitter, expecting backlash, and he was right. Misunderstandings? There was no misunderstanding. You got caught. A non-apology. They're not sorry they did it. They're sorry they got exposed. This just proves they meant every word of those emails. They just didn't expect to get caught. But then, a new tweet appeared. One that caught his attention immediately. A rival hotel chain had just made a move. Unlike the Hudson Royale, we believe in real inclusivity. Everyone is welcome here. We'd be honored to host Barron Trump anytime. And just like that, the narrative shifted again. People began canceling their Hudson Royale reservations. Public figures announced they were switching hotels. And, in an almost poetic twist, some former guests of the Hudson Royale took selfies from inside the rival hotel, tagging their location with captions like, "Now this is what real inclusivity looks like." Barron smirked. It was over for them. And now they had only one option left, a direct apology, to him. And if they sent it, he had to decide whether to accept it or let them sink. The Hudson Royale was drowning. Their weak excuse of a statement had backfired spectacularly. Instead of quieting the backlash, it had fueled the outrage. Social media wasn't letting this go. The leaked emails had destroyed any credibility they had left. Now they were in full panic mode. Negative reviews kept flooding in. People who had booked upcoming stays began canceling en masse. Even longtime guests, Hollywood elites, politicians, and media figures distanced themselves from the hotel. Barron watched it all unfold in real time. His phone buzzed nonstop. On Twitter, a rival luxury hotel had made their move. Unlike some, we believe in true inclusivity. Everyone is welcome here. Mr. Trump, we'd be honored to have you as our guest anytime. The internet exploded. People started posting selfies from the rival hotel, tagging their locations, and using hashtags like #RealInclusivity, #Boycott Hudson Royale, #StayHarryorestic. And just like that, the Hudson Royale had been replaced. Then came the moment Barron had been waiting for. His phone buzzed. An email that wasn't just from a manager, it was from the CEO. "Mr. Trump, we deeply regret the events that transpired during your visit. This does not reflect the values we strive to uphold. We sincerely apologize for any distress this may have caused. We would like to invite you back as our guest, with our deepest apologies." There it was, the final surrender. Barron exhaled sharply, staring at the message. After everything, after they humiliated him in public, encouraged the applause, and let people mock him, they thought an email would fix it? His phone buzzed again, a text. It was from his father. "Good job," Barron smirked. They had tried to make an example out of him. Instead, he made an example out of them. And now he had to decide, would he accept their apology? Or would he let them drown? Barron stared at the email, rereading the words carefully. We sincerely apologize for any distress this may have caused. Distress? They had humiliated him in front of a packed lobby. They had laughed, applauded. A well-known talk show host had mocked him openly, and the hotel staff had stood by and done nothing. And now that their reputation was in freefall, now that their so-called inclusive image was being torn apart, now that even their own side was turning against them, they suddenly wanted to apologize. Barron let out a slow breath, leaning back in his chair. This wasn't about making things right. It was about saving themselves. And yet, for the first time since the incident began, Barron hesitated. He had won. Completely. The Hudson Royale had been exposed, humiliated, and left scrambling. Their competitors had stolen their clientele. Their name was forever tainted. He could let it die out, or he could go further. His eyes flickered over to his phone, where his father's text was still visible. Good job. There was no way his father would accept an apology. No way he would let a place that had publicly disrespected his name get away with a simple PR statement. He could already hear what Donald Trump would say in one of his speeches. They tried to destroy us, folks, but guess what? We destroyed them. These woke clowns thought they could humiliate my son, but now their business is crashing. It's a beautiful thing to watch. Barron smirked at the thought, but Barron wasn't his father. His approach had always been different. Instead of throwing more gasoline on the fire, what if he did the opposite? His fingers hovered over the keyboard. And then he began to type. Dear Hudson Royale, he wrote, keeping his tone calm and controlled. I appreciate your response. I truly hope that the lesson learned here extends beyond just your business losses. Treating people fairly and with respect shouldn't be conditional on political views, last names, or public perception. Your actions spoke louder than words, and the world saw them. That's something you'll have to live with. As for your offer, thank you, but I'll pass. He hovered over the send button. For a moment, he imagined what would happen next. This email, his response, would go viral. People would see that he wasn't just another bitter victim lashing out. He wasn't his father. He was smarter. And the Hudson Royale? They wouldn't get their grand, dramatic redemption. They wouldn't be able to pretend that all was forgiven. No, their humiliation would live on. Barron smiled slightly as he pressed send. He leaned back, feeling an unexpected sense of satisfaction. This was how you truly win. Not just by exposing your enemies, but by leaving them with nothing. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more. What do you think? Was Barron right to reject the apology, or should he have accepted it? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.